Hello and welcome to my review of Slaughterhouse 5, or The Children's Crusade, A Duty Dance with Death. This book was written in 1969 by Kurt Vonnegut and based in part on his own war experiences. As such, is either partly true, mostly true, or not true at all. It follows the adventures of Billy Pilgrim across time, space, and a movie star. Pilgrim's tale is bookended by two chapters, apparently in Vonnegut's own voice, that recount the genesis of the story and blur the lines between author and narrator as effectively as somebody putting a thumb over a camera lens. Pilgrim becomes unstuck in time. He bounces back and forth between a number of aspects of his life: his prosaic post-war marriage to Valencia, his experiences as a prisoner of war of the Germans, where he is eventually transferred to the supposed safe haven of Dresden, just in time to witness firsthand the Allied firebombing that destroyed most of the city. He also experiences his future with Valencia, witnesses his children grow up, the development of his successful business, and he survives a plane crash. He is also kidnapped by aliens and put in a zoo and expected to mate with Montana Wildback, the hottest movie star of the era. The aliens from Tralfamadore experience all time at once. As such, they see every moment that ever has been and ever will be. Linear time, free will are irrelevant concepts, and the book is pretty much presented as that, zigzagging from story to story, time period to time period, in a way that might seem random, but is instead intricately twisted to create a vision that is, like the Tralfamadorian books, beautiful, surprising, and deep. This roller coaster through time makes each paragraph begin as something of a mystery. Many critics have considered Billy's troubles a representation of PTSD, and there are enough hints here that Pilgrim may well represent Vonnegut's own coping mechanism. Billy seems to experience life in something of a confused daze. He plays virtually no active part in his own story, instead being dragged from pillar to post by characters and circumstances. For example, when his father throws him into a swimming pool to teach him how to swim, he simply sinks and requires rescue. This seems to be his approach to life generally, but his docility is seen most vividly in the repeated "so it goes" mantra, the impassive Tralfamadorian response to almost everything, but most chillingly used by Vonnegut after every death in the book, and there are many. Despite this, there's also a lot of humour in the book, most of it bitingly black, such as the Tralfamadorians' deadpan description of the end of the universe, their ham-fisted attempts to breed human beings in the zoo. Billy witnesses it all with a mixture of bemusement and indifference without a will of his own. Even his pleas to be left behind or alone go unheeded. To Billy, nothing really makes sense on Earth until he begins to see things through the eyes of the Tralfamadorians. In this, Vonnegut begins to make readers question the grand narratives we take for granted, primarily concepts of time, religion, mankind's position in the universe, and the definition of reality itself. Obviously, he intends for audiences to extrapolate these concepts and question the narratives given not just for the bombing of Dresden, which in 1969 would have found something of a mirror in the napalm bombing occurring in Vietnam, but for war in general. War only makes sense to the Tralfamadorians, to whom there is no such thing as free will. This makes the question something deeply personal. A soldier can't pick up a gun and shoot his enemy, a pilot cannot drop bombs on an enemy city, and think that the generals or government will take ultimate responsibility. Vonnegut's use of intertextuality in this regard is most striking. He draws on military texts and speeches from President Truman, and he links them to the zany, fictional sci-fi stories of the writer Kilgore Trout, the Nazi propaganda espoused by the peculiar cowboy Nazi Howard W. Campbell Jr., inviting comparison between them in the same way that Pilgrim's adventures in space are presented by Vonnegut in an identical fashion to his war experiences. All of this happens, he tells us, more or less, and it all serves to make everything seem very real. It's an astonishing achievement in barely 175 pages. It feels more like 3 books in one, each richer and more detailed than one book of this length should feel. The characters are all completely convincing, from the tragic Edgar Darby, who is shot for stealing a teapot, the bitter misanthrope Kilgore Trout, the tragic Russian prisoner of war who probably saves Pilgrim's life and doesn't even get a word of thanks, right the way through to the Tralfamadorian who explains the aliens' ways to Billy. Basically, this is a postmodern masterpiece, worthy of the many accolades it's received over the years. The descriptions of the aftermath of Dresden are quite chilling. The madcap experiences on Tralfamadore are full of quirky humour and thought-provoking questions. This book is a remarkable achievement that I cannot recommend any higher. In all likelihood, you can get a copy quite cheaply, and you can read this fairly quickly, so there simply isn't a good reason not to own it, to read it, and to thoroughly enjoy it.